So last week I had an idea. What gun builds would AI provide me with for Delta Force? So I went to ChatGPT, gave it the query, give me meta weapon builds for the Delta Force video game, and then it started giving me weapons with weapon share codes. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know it would actually give me weapon share codes. Turns out it was referring to a Neon PWA video on YouTube about the best meta weapons for Delta Force in 2025. I initially thought it would just like go through a bunch of aggregations of meta weapon builds throughout the internet and then provide me with like a blend of all of them. So I was like, no, don't use a video, come up with your own stuff. And then it basically just used the exact same weapons because I think it was still keeping the reference to that specific video, and then provided me with guidelines to build. So it didn't actually know like what the attachments available are in Delta Force, but it still gave me a general idea of how to build the weapons. So it gave me weapon builds for the following: the CI-19, the M4A1, the SR3M, SMG-45, AWM, R93, and the AUG, which are, according to ChatGPT, the meta weapons in Delta Force. What was also interesting is it even gave me like names for these loadouts. So the Vanguard for the CI-19, the M4A1 Tactical AR, the SR3M Close Quarters Assault Rifle, the SMG-45 Blitz SMG, AWM Titan Sniper Rifle, R93 Viper Sniper Rifle, and the AUG Berserker. So taking the ChatGPT recommendations into account, I went ahead and built these 7 different weapons. And then I went through and tried them out in the game to see if they were actually, you know, potent or viable weapons to be used in Delta Force. I did have to take some creative liberties because overall the prompt that I put in only gave me 4 attachments per weapon: the optic, the muzzle, the grip, and the stock, and it just gave me like a guideline. It didn't say specifically this is the foregrip you need to go with, this is the specific optic, albeit for some it kind of did. So yeah, some creative liberties were taken, and then for the rest of the attachments I tried to reflect the description that it gave me in the name. So if it was long range, medium range, or like a very close quarters weapon, then I adapted the build accordingly. So we're going to go through these 9 weapon builds and I'll give my thoughts on whether it actually functions you know, decently in Delta Force, or whether ChatGPT kind of dropped the ball. So starting off with the CI-19 Vanguard Assault Rifle, it gave me the specification that it needed to be long range. So I went with that in mind and then put the gas block with the slower fire rate to give it more stability and recoil control, and I put all Ranger handguard panels on here, didn't upgrade the mag, and yeah, modified it so it would be very somewhat performant at longer range combat. And obviously the CI-19 is probably one of the better assault rifles in the game, and I found that it was actually a lot better when I was using it in single fire versus full auto at the ranges that seem to be suggested by ChatGPT. I mean, don't get me wrong, even in medium to CQB, if you're putting it on full auto, I could even hip fire and it would perform very well. Again, CI-19, very, very strong assault rifle in the game, which is unfortunately only available to the assault class. Using this thing in single fire at those longer ranges, like almost 100 meters out, this thing is a freaking beast. I was just eliminating people left, right, and center with this thing, like on trench lines where you get those longer sight ranges between Echo and Bravo. Absolutely fantastic. I had never really used the CI-19 in this fashion. The build that I had made had a red dot sight, and honestly, I would usually use a red dot sight for most weapons, as you know, those engagement ranges at 100 meters out, I can still somewhat take them with relative ease, even though I'm only using an RDS. But with that ACOG 4X optic, obviously it's a lot easier to spot your target and fire at them consistently with that magnified optic. So overall, I'll say the CI-19 assault rifle build that ChatGPT gave me general guidelines for did perform very well, and I was very pleased with what it gave me, and I will definitely use this build again. So for the M4A1, it gave me the specification that need to be a balanced AR. So it did say that I needed to put a reflex optic on here, so you know, just an RDS of some kind, my favorite one, and then an angled foregrip for better recoil control. Same thing for the muzzle. It gave me the specification that I need to put a compensator on here. Again, M4A1, pretty powerful assault rifle, probably one of the better ones in the game. I feel like you could put mostly any attachment on there and the weapon would still perform very well, and obviously it did in Delta Force. I had obviously equipped more attachments on here, like the stock, to boost up some of the other stats, and as well as the pistol grip itself. I didn't actually change the mag. I kept it on a 30 rounder to get that quicker reload time. But yeah, M4A1 just a powerhouse, and obviously most games in which it is featured, and it's not different in Delta Force. It's kind of a trope for the M4A1 to be like a meta weapon in all first-person shooters, and it's not different in Delta Force. So overall, I would say that the ChatGPT build is very, very good, but the M4A1 is very, very good out of the box. So I don't really think it brought much more to the table than what I would have done with the M4A1 otherwise. But yeah, definitely viable build, but most of them are for the M4. So for the SR3M, it specified that it needed to be close range with an iron sights, so no optic, and then the muzzle, it mentioned that it needed to be a suppressor to stay off enemy radar, and then the grip, tactical grip for better control during rapid fire, and the stock, a lightweight stock. So I loosely based the weapon build off of this, giving it the best suppressor that I think would fit the description of ChatGPT, so the SR3M stealth suppressor, you know, reducing the fire rate with something like the silent suppressor, which, yeah, unfortunately does reduce the fire rate, which I didn't really want for this build. I just went with the 30 round magazine on the SR3M, and then obviously I kept the iron sights and decked it out with the rest of the weapon furniture to boost those weapon stats, most notably the Hornet handguard panel, which gives you the increase in accuracy, so boosting your hip fire and making it a lot more accurate. And then I went with one of the lightweight stocks that had it in the name. Again, SR3M, super powerful, the highest damaging SMG in the game, unfortunately only available to the support class. But yeah, it would perform exactly how you think. You're doing 27 damage per shot, but obviously you want to use it in very close quarter engagements. But how I built it out, it does have the maximum damage up to 17 meters, which is, you know, not great, but for an SMG, it's pretty decent. But yeah, I was rushing a lot. I was using Stinger for this specific weapon, popping smoke when I needed to, you know, close the gap on enemies that were a little bit further. I didn't actually hate the iron sights on this weapon. They're very good. And when I was getting into super close range engagements, I would just hipfire the thing, because honestly, hipfire on SMGs is just chef's kiss. You can deal with enemies that are even pretty far out there. Like even at that 17 meter range, I wouldn't be afraid to hipfire somebody and win that firefight. So yeah, SR3M, one of my preferred SMGs in the game because of that higher damage model, which I am a fan of. Less shots for getting an enemy kill is always something that I will tend to go for over a very high fire rate. But yeah, if I were to change this build, I would obviously put an optic on here. Just makes it easier to get your enemies in your sight picture as opposed to having the iron sights, but still not a terrible build. So I would give this build a very strong recommendation to try it out. Next, we have the SMG-45 Blitz SMG close range. So this one, it did specify that I need to put an optic on here, flash hider to avoid blinding flash, which I don't think is that much of a big deal in Delta Force, but I digress. Then a vertical grip and a collapsible stock. So I tried to, you know, place attachments based off of this recommendation. SMG-45 submachine gun, a lot of people say that it is the best SMG among all of them in Delta Force. I mean, it does do 26 maximum damage. The way I built it here has 23 meters in range, so a little bit longer range than the SR3M that I just presented, and you're doing only 1 damage less at, of course, a slightly lower fire rate. But overall, this weapon build, the handling on this thing was just like insanely high. At 87, you are ADSing so freaking fast that you don't really need to hipfire, albeit the sprint to hipfire delay was super short at 51 milliseconds, and then the current ADS speed on this thing was 184 milliseconds. So it's like snap of the finger and you're going from sprint to fire ready, which is just bonkers. So yeah, definitely really enjoyed this weapon build. You know, obviously I adapted it a little bit from what it gave me in the response. But yeah, the SMG-45, I hadn't really used it all that much. I was mostly focusing on other SMGs, but a very, very strong SMG. I still prefer the SR3M a little bit over this specific one, but this one is a lot better at those longer or, you know, medium-ish ranges that the SR3M kind of lacks. But yeah, the way that ChatGPT gave me guidelines to build this weapon, it is definitely fitting the Blitz tag that it gave it, because it is just, you are bum rushing people and just hip firing so fast and ADSing so fast that people don't know what hit them. And overall, very satisfied with this specific weapon build. So the next one is the AWM Titan sniper rifle. So obviously the AWM is the highest damaging sniper rifle in the game with arguably the longest range at which it does maximum damage. I will preface this by saying that I'm unfortunately not a fan of sniping in Delta Force because the ranges at which you would find yourself sniping, most ARs can do a similar job. Same thing for marksman rifles, because you're not getting really super long sight ranges in most of the maps. You might be sniping at like 200 to 300-ish meters. I personally don't really like the stationary kind of sniping where you'd be way out in the boonies, the bipod down and trying to snipe at like 1,000 meters out to play the objective in Delta Force. So yeah, this specific weapon build, I tried to make it work with the like playing as an aggressive recon or aggressive-ish recon, and yeah, unfortunately didn't work all that well. You do have the 8x scope on there, which really reduces your handling of the weapon, and a bolt action rifle is already very slow to ADS, so it does shoot incredibly fast. The muzzle velocity on this thing is north of 1,300 meters, which is just insanely quick. You don't really need to compensate for bullet drop even at those really long ranges, so 400, 500 meters. You don't really need to compensate, so I think it really captured the essence of the AWM long-range sniper build here with, you know, the suppressor. I did put the extended barrel on there to increase the muzzle velocity further as, you know, it specified long-range precision, and it definitely is a long-range precision sniper rifle. So if you're looking for a weapon build that you can use at those extremely long ranges, I think this very well fits that specific type of gameplay. So albeit I think this build is good, it just doesn't fit my playstyle all that well. So the next one is the R93 Viper sniper rifle, which specifies rapid follow-up shots. So the R93 sniper rifle is the sniper rifle that has the fastest rate of fire, clocking in at 65 RPM. Now you might be thinking that's not quick at all, but for a bolt action rifle, it is pretty fast. So it did specify to put a 6x sniper scope on here for optimal range and accuracy. So I went with the ACOG, and then yeah, I fitted it out with like the flash hider that I mentioned to maintain stealth, the bipod, which unfortunately I didn't use all that much. Again, I don't play very stationary, and then a precision stock, which you can't unfortunately change the stock on the R93 sniper rifle, but I digress. Didn't change the mag either, kept it at the base 10 round mag, which I think is sufficient for a bolt action. So this fit my playstyle a lot better, getting those quick follow-up shots, because when you're obviously a little bit closer, you might be firing at targets that are moving a lot of the time, as opposed to those longer ranges where you might be looking for targets that are stationary. The R93, probably one of my preferred sniper rifles because you get those follow-up shots so quickly. The cycle of the bolt, you know, is so fast that you are getting 2 shots off before the enemy can mostly get into cover. So yeah, this sniper rifle fits my playstyle a lot better, albeit the scope a little bit too magnified for my taste. I would have opted for maybe a 3.5x or 4x at most, because I am using this weapon in like those 200 meter ranges, which the 6x is simply just overkill for. I did manage to get some pretty long range kills with the R93 sniper rifle, but you do need to compensate a lot more because the muzzle velocity is like less than half of the AWM. So it's a very different type of playstyle for the R93, at least this specific R93 build, but it is very fun to play and a lot more in my wheelhouse. So yeah, with a few adjustments of mostly the optic, I would definitely use this specific weapon build again. And last but certainly not least, the AUG Berserker assault rifle medium range build. So it told me to put a 3x hollow sight on here for versatility in medium range, a compensator to control the recoil, angled grip to increase the control even further, and also a stock. So it specified a tactical stock, but you can't change the stock on the AUG, so I put the cheek pad and the butt pad as well. And overall, yeah, the AUG is just a very, very stable weapon to fire in, you know, most shooter games. It does have a little bit of horizontal recoil, but a lot of that can be corrected, which I did. Very usable build. Not a fan of 3x or any of the 3x optics in Delta Force that are available. I could have put the ACOG 3.5x and then reduced the zoom a little bit, but I just opted to put the viewpoint 3x scope on here, which again, not a very big fan of. But yeah, how it built it out, it had pretty well-rounded stats, or how I built it out. I opted to keep the 30 round mag on this one to not, you know, degrade a lot of the other stats so much. With the 60 rounder, didn't put a laser on here. It still performed very well, as the accuracy was still 69. The control was actually 87. Now, would I use this build over my own custom build that I had made? Probably not. I did increase the overall range on my build by 6 meters, so you're doing 20 damage at that 46 meter range, which doesn't seem massive, but it is it still does make a little bit of a difference. And yeah, I had just bumped up the control like all the way. It was a lot slower to ADS with my specific build, but I did enjoy using it a lot more. I felt like it was shaking a lot less, if that makes any sense, albeit the stability on my specific build was a little bit higher, which when you do hold your breath, it makes it a lot easier to fire, and you're getting less aim punch when somebody's actually hitting you back. So the build that ChatGPT came up with, I think, is a little bit worse than the one that I personally made, as the stability did take a hit, but it was a lot better at hip firing. So when you're getting into those close range engagements, or like you need to hip fire because the enemy's like right in front of you, this build did perform better than mine. But yeah, overall, I would rather have my build than this specific AUG build. It still did a good job, but just, you know, a little bit short of what I would have gone for. So that does it for all the weapons that ChatGPT gave me builds for, at least the meta weapons. So it didn't give me builds for all the weapons in Delta Force, because that would have taken, honestly, forever. You know, surprisingly enough, it didn't give me any builds for marksman rifles. It didn't give me any builds for shotguns. So if that is indicative of the state of these weapons in Delta Force, I don't know what is. For the most part, the lists that I did see for meta weapons in Delta Force kept those specific classes out of them. So yeah, maybe they need to look at the overall balancing of those two weapon classes in Delta Force. Honestly, marksman rifles feel pretty underpowered, because most weapons that are fully automatic can do a pretty similar job to the marksman rifles, because, you know, all the weapons, if you mod them correctly, can definitely be laser beams, because there's no like bullet deviation, so random bullet deviation, or so I can definitely see why it kept the marksman rifles out of there. But overall, I'm very satisfied with what ChatGPT came up with, albeit it might have based itself off of Neon PWA's video for the weapon selection. It did give me, you know, general pointers as to how to build the weapons. So yeah, definitely a fun video to work on and make. In the future, I might try and use other AI to build me weapons in Delta Force and then compare them against each other or something. I don't know. I was just having fun with this. It's just a random idea that popped into my head. The weapon share codes will be in the description down below, as well as in the top pinned comment if you want to give them a try for yourself. You don't know, maybe you'll find your new favorite weapon build. In any case, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.